Today is the beginning of May, and it is Mental Health Awareness Month in the United States. And Dr. Carole Lieberman, we are so honored, is joining us today because we are going to be sharing her voice, her expertise. We're going to be having, maybe it could be raw, honest, open discussion, but it's the reality in 2024. And I want everybody to be prepared. And Dr. Carole Lieberman, I don't know what to say about you. You are an author, 3 times Emmy honored media psychiatrist, TV personality. You've been on every radio, international, nationally stationed. You're on television. You are all over the place. And I want to jump right in. You have dedicated yourselves. I'm a New Yorker. You're from New York. You have dedicated yourself since 9/11 to helping families, carry on, to keep calm and carry on. But I want everybody, we have a lot to discuss today, to follow Dr. Carole on Twitter. Oops, it's called X, but I still call it Twitter.
I do too.
Or I go X Twitter, whatever, but I'm going to call it Twitter. I'm going to be with you on this one. Dr. Carole, MD. That's a Carole with an E. And also the website. And I'm urging all of you, please go there. You can find all of her terrific books, but we're going to talk about that also. terroristtherapist.com. All of Dr. Carole's information will be in the body of this video. So Dr. Carole Lieberman, welcome to the Warriors.
Thank you so much. It's good to be back.
Now, I am so happy to see you. I'm like, if there's one woman for the job, it is Dr. Carole. As we enter into this Mental Health Awareness Month, we know we have a well-documented youth mental health crisis. So I'm going to jump around a little bit. So I apologize ahead of time, but I got so many questions for you. First, before we start, I want to know a little bit about you. Why, whatever you want to reveal, but why did you want to be a therapist?
Okay. When I was 8 years old, it goes back, when I was 8 years old, I read a book about the first woman doctor in America. And that got me, it made an impression on me, and I wanted to become a doctor. Then when I was in my teenage years, I read Freud's interpretation of dreams. And right away, I connected to that. And because I'm an only child, and, so when I went to school, when I first started, being involved with other children, it was like I had to try to figure them out, in order to be liked, in order to get along, so I was actually being like I like to think of being like a mini Freud in my capacity as a 5-year-old, or whatever age I was, when I like going into kindergarten, trying to figure people out. And so when I read Freud's book, it really resonated, all the things that he was saying.
Wow.
So that's how I decided to become a psychiatrist. And I'm a born and bred New Yorker. I went, yes, yay, except for how what Adams is doing to the city makes me so sad every morning.
That's another program, because we got to fight for our cities. No, we have to fight. I refuse to give in. Again, that's another program, but I refuse to give in. I'm a New Yorker. I love it. It's our beautiful city. There's nothing like it. We cannot allow them to ruin it. I'm sorry. I digress, Dr. Carole.
No. I'm
a cheerleader. I'm a cheerleader for New York. When a lot of people left during that horrible, I don't want to say the word COVID, but I just said it. They went to Florida and they're like, why do you and your husband still stay there?
Yes.
Because we fight for our city. We love our city.
Well, I admire you for that. I really do. So what did you, and then I did my training at Bellevue, NYU Bellevue.
Oh my goodness.
And then after that, I also trained in London at Anna Freud's clinic in Hampstead. And so I've been around.
You've been around, but you know what? What a body of, work and study and wealth, like to your brain. I can tell you right now, you were reading Freud as a teenager? That's kind of remarkable. I've never met anybody else who has done that, because I know adults who can barely read Freud. So, wow. And it resonated with you. So you have that kind of mind, maybe like this sponge that's absorbing, and you're seeing yourself. And wow, I love that.
And so when I was in Anna Freud's clinic, that was right before she died. So I actually had the incredible good fortune to be taught by her. You see how it kind of came around, the circle came around. I was inspired to go into psychiatry by reading Freud, and I ultimately got taught by his daughter, Anna Freud.
Unbelievable. That sounds like a documentary almost. Like,
Yeah.
like that kind of something like that. Now, let me ask you, okay, let's ask about lions and tigers and terrorists. Oh my, which you have under your name right here on the video. You are a well-regarded an author. Tell us about this book, because this book is something that every parent, guardian, family member, general public needs to read today on how to deal with our kids. So let's jump into that a little bit and tell us about that.
Yes. Well, let me just preface it by saying that, I'm a born and bred New Yorker. Even though I live in California now, my heart is still in New York.
You're still a New
And
Yorker.
yes. And so when 9/11 happened, I was heartbroken. And I asked myself, what could I do, with what I bring to the table? What could I do to help people with terrorism, which I knew somehow, even though at that point, I really didn't know anything about terrorism. I mean, that was one of the terrorism and sports were the two things I skipped, like when reading the paper or reading something. But I knew that it was going to be the worst thing that happened to us in our lives. And so I asked myself what I could do to help people. As a previous author, I mean, I've had already written books, television commentator, radio commentator, psychiatrist, all of that. And that's when I kind of put together what I call the terrorist therapist. And my most recent book on terrorism, I've written several. My most recent, Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, Oh My, How to Protect Your Child in a Time of Terror, is so couldn't be more relevant today. I mean, obviously it was relevant back then, 9/11, but I mean, it wasn't around on 9/11, but now, especially for kids, the book is basically divided into two halves. The first half is a book for adults, parents, teachers, anyone who works with or has contact with kids, and it tells you how to talk to kids about terrorism, what to do to build resilience in kids for terrorist attacks. How to get them to express their feelings, what to look for in them as far as when they need professional help, all those kinds of things. And then the second half of the book is a picture book. And it is for kids to read with the parent, preferably, so you can talk about it, not just give them the book, although they could, of course, read that part by themselves. But, it's always good to have a parent to talk about these things when, they're very sensitive subjects. And that is really, talk about not pulling any punches, that is really all the things that you need to know about terrorism, from what is a terrorist, and I compare it to, it's written in it's written in language that children can understand. So for example, what is a terrorist? A terrorist is like a bully on the playground. He wants you to do things that he wants and to have you think the way he thinks. I mean, it's written better in the book, but that's the idea. And then I talk about Osama bin Laden and 9/11. I talk about the underwear bomber. Imagine that, a man putting a bomb in his underwear. I talk about France, Paris, the magazine, and the pictures of Muhammad and all that, the Boston Marathon, all the key things that you kind of need to know about terrorism. And then I talk about really why terrorists want to kill us. That's a section, and I talk about how they have a different religion. And if you don't believe in their God, they want you to believe in their God. And they want to put Sharia law into place. And I don't go into what Sharia law is, but I it's all the things that even kids need to know, especially now. I mean, I did not foresee the current kind of terror attacks we're having now. In terms of the students having become terrorists in a sense, because they've stepped over the line. It's not just free speech anymore. They're not protected. They're not just, they don't just have placards and are calling out for things, but even what they're calling out for is not really protected by free speech, by the First Amendment, because they're calling for people to do things like, notably, to kill Jews and things like that. And So, this is really, in a sense, these are little terror attacks that are happening all over the United States. But I was expecting, and this will come too, terror attacks from radical Islamists, just like the same guys who brought you 9/11, or ISIS and Al Qaeda and so on. There are lots of terrorist groups. So we are going to be we are at the beginning of this.
I don't know. I think we're even past that, Dr. Carol.
Well,
I mean, there's so many little things happening, and that's why, we can no longer shield the children. I deal with a lot of parents and grandparents. It's like they're seeing everything on the internet, right? And so that's the new playground. It used to be, you heard it on the playground or something like that.
yeah,
They're seeing everything's being thrown. We have plenty of studies, dangerous algorithms direct it. A child can innocently, a teen, be looking for something. They see
yes,
porn. So we have to be those warriors. Like we have to be the ones
right,
that know our facts, know some
yeah,
easy resources. And that's what I try to encourage. I see you shaking your head, yes, because I don't know. There's such resistance in a
yes,
lot of what I do, but I know it's ugly and dark, like all these subjects. I do a lot with trafficking,
uh-huh,
human labor, child protection, but we don't have the luxury. Would you agree with this anymore of just letting
well,
it's going to go away? We are in the thick of it and we have to step up and be the leaders for our own kids, right?
yes. When I've been to some book fairs, and people will come over and they'll look at the cover of the book, and it's a
Uh-oh.
picture of from The Wizard of Oz, with kids going off in a balloon, but then in the background it has the Eiffel Tower. Well, it has the Twin Towers in New York. It has different places where terrorists have already attacked, and so first they'll say, "Oh, wow, how to protect your child at a time of terror, a book on terrorism for kids," and then
Yeah.
they start flipping through it, and they realize, yes, kids, they do need to talk to their kids about this. The sad thing is, I mean, there's a lot of sad things, but particularly now, um, we already know that children are going through a mental health crisis
Yes.
without without terrorism on top of this. And so they are, quite frankly, they are less prepared now to deal with terrorism than they were when 9/11 happened, because they were relatively healthy mentally when 9/11 happened. And so now it's like a double whammy. But the key is that kids, you can't pretend that they don't know what's going on, just like what you were
Right.
saying. First of all, they see the news, they pass through the living room, and they see the news, and they want to know what's going on, or they turn on the internet, or look on their phones.
Yes.
Yes, so you can't. I mean, it used to be that parents would try to protect them from knowing about these things, but yes, some parents still are trying to protect them, but now, I mean, like with the college campuses, of course, a lot of parents could try to tell them, well, this has nothing to do with terrorism, but that's not true. And I don't believe in lying to children. The most important thing is telling them the truth and then helping them to cope with it. I talk about how kids are either mad, sad, bad, um, mad, sad, mad, sad, bad. I talk about, and bad is something that kind of um, contains all different kinds of feelings. It's not that they're bad. Um, but the key is to get them to express themselves. How are they feeling with all the things that they're seeing going on in America? And because you have to get them to express their emotions. Um,
That's the tough one because look, when I look at the stats, and I have to say, Dr. Carol, I've been reading the same stat now for 3 years, so I think it's actually higher, but they say 1 in 6 children suffer from some sort of mental health disorder, anxiety, depression. But I've been reading that since
yeah,
like during COVID. So it's got to be like higher by now. So let's
yeah,
just say, for argument's sake, we'll just say like 1 in 5. Okay, that's 20% of kids. And the studies all vary a little bit or something. But look, we've got these rageful kids. You've seen these stories, these beat downs now these teens are doing, where the teen girl recently, the other girl was beating
yes,
her head
yes,
into, and then we've got kids killing families. Every day I'm confronted with press
yeah.
releases and the internet wiping out whole families, or I mean, it's horrendous.
Killing
So what
parents if your parents don't want you to go out with a certain guy, so you just kill them.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I'm saying. So we have such rage. We've got the school shootings that happen, fairly frequently. I don't even like to say that, but the kids are watching all of this. I have to tell you, and I'm glad you said that earlier. Um, First of all, thank you for 9/11. Thank you for your 9/11 work, because whoever that person is, they have to wait because you're all mine right
that's
now.
right.
No, but thank you, because I was here on 9/11, and that was my wake up call. I was busy. Our kids were, younger than a mom and all this stuff. But even then, and I'm so much smarter now, Dr. Carol, but like there was something wrong with that whole thing in my mind. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, buildings don't fall like that down the street. So that was my wake up period too. So thank you for all you're doing with all of that, and leaping off into that whole thing. So now fast forward, we've got, a couple of decades later. How do we deal with the kids um right exactly now? Let's deal with the parents first, because the parents aren't doing such. Now this is terrible, because I'm trying not to be judgy, but I am a little bit. The parents are not being good role models. When I see women my age dancing in bikinis on TikTok, and then I'm preaching like, don't let your child spend so much time on TikTok. No, but how do you deal with all this? What should we do?
Oh,
Good loaded
well,
question, but
um, well, it is. I mean, I hate to say it, but parents are not not doing. Many parents, not all parents, but many parents are not doing a good enough job. They are more into what makes them happy. What they didn't get as a child, what they want to get. See, part of it, I know I hate to keep bringing up, or I didn't mention it yet here, but um, people don't seem, like you mentioned about COVID, to say the bad word. People don't want to realize or don't want to acknowledge how things have changed since COVID, since the lockdowns, and how they have
everything,
changed.
everything.
Uh, yes, everything really has changed, because that was a time when we all had to face our mortality, when some people had loved ones die, when everything was locked down, we became isolated. Before the COVID lockdowns, there have been studies on the impact of isolation on people, and that alone causes physical and psychological problems. And kids missed 2 years of school and 2 years of socialization, and instead they were online, getting bullied and getting jealous. And and yes, and one of the key things for why we came out so angry, came out of lockdown so angry. First of all, it was angry at all the stuff that they made us do, take vaccines, and stay locked down and wear masks and all of that. I refused to take the vaccine, and I didn't let my daughter take the vaccine, and I am so grateful. um, but it wasn't easy. I mean, some people had their jobs threatened if they didn't take
A
it.
lot had them here in New York. You couldn't go in
Yes.
buildings if you didn't show, vaccine cards and things like
Yes.
that.
So people were angry about that. But also, what made people angry is that, especially teen boys or even younger boys, what did they do with all that time that they had in lockdown? They became what's called bedroom terrorists. They spent their time online playing violent video games. So we can't be surprised that they came out, loaded for bear.
And also, Dr. Carol, we have right now, the FBI put out 3 warnings in the past year, but it seems to kind of fall on deaf ears. We've got this sextortion going on, especially affecting teenage boys, 14 to 17, where
Oh,
they're
yeah.
committing suicide because they're embarrassed to go to their parent because they've sent a nude image. Now, I work with a lot of schools, teachers across the country, and the kids are exchanging nude images like it's nothing. Like they don't, and they also give away their information. Within 24 hours, a stranger knows so much about them. So they
Yeah.
may be thinking, as an example, they're talking to another teen girl or boy, exchange an image, when it's really a guy in Nigeria. That is their biggest business now, Dr. Carol, in Nigeria, running
Yes.
all the scams of sextortion. But the kids are killing themselves instead of coming to the parent over
Yes.
a nude image. Now, who likes that? But I preach like they're seeing everything anyway. So parents, talk to those kids and be cool with it. Let them come to you and take care of it, because that's a crime. And then parents have to know what to do, how to report it. But why would kids What is that link
Instead
missing?
of
They're
instead
willing to
of
send a nude image. They're willing to
oh,
do all this stuff easily in 24 hours with turns out to be a stranger who demands, okay, send me $100. And then the kid doesn't have $100 or steals the $100. Okay, now send me 500
right.
or directs them, which is this is a whole nother program altogether, directs them how to videotape, assaulting their sibling and
Mhm.
then sending, and instead of doing reporting to parents or guardians, trusted adult, they kill themselves.
Yes.
And it's especially boys.
Well, the key to all of this is parents need to grow, nurture the feeling in their child from the time that they are very young to that they should come to them and talk to them about
Yes.
things that bother them or that they're curious about or that they don't understand, anything like that. And they need to make themselves really available to answer these things. And they need to I was talking before about they need to notice when kids are actually, it's four things: mad, bad, scared, and sad. I knew I left one out. So they need to recognize these things and help kids, whether it's by giving them paper to draw on, or if they can't just talk to them, if they're not verbal enough, or they're embarrassed to talk, or they're afraid to talk. But any which way, I give lots of different ways, techniques that you can get your children to express their emotions to you. But if they don't tell you their emotions, whether it's about sextortion or about terrorism, and they keep it inside, either they may kill themselves, or more often, it will just become psychological problems. Now, what's interesting about 9/11 is that the kids that we have today, they grew up, well, like you were talking about. Now, I don't think this refers to you, but a lot of parents, I mean, people couldn't help it, really. Of course, parents who were alive on 9/11 felt all these different emotions themselves, and that by osmosis got into their kids. And it also made their kids angry that their parents weren't fully there for them because they were, absorbed in what's going on in the world,
Right.
or they got angry at what happened to America, all these different things. And parents didn't really address that enough. I'm sure you probably did, but
Well,
in
no,
general,
but Dr. Carol, the first reaction was so my three kids now, our three kids are in their 30s now. So they weren't like little babies, but they were still,
uh-huh,
like the 8, 10, 12.
right.
And what does a parent do? Like you want to shield. But like in those days, I'm like, turn off the TV. Like that was the extent of my kids were just like a little bit before the internet. So they didn't have phones. They weren't like doing all that stuff. Um,
Uh-huh,
but no, in our household, we discuss things
uh-huh,
age
uh-huh.
appropriately, like that kind of, so knock on wood, they're very well adjusted. Adults for the most part, which I'm very proud of, instead of trying to hide it. Because I had a lot of friends, don't ever, don't ever talk about that. Don't. I'm like, how you not
Yeah,
talk about it? You
yeah,
walk outside, and for 2 months there's smoke in the air. Like you have to
yeah,
do something. And,
absolutely.
and so I fast forward now again, all these years later, Dr. Carol, and we still have the resistance by parents more than ever. We need this open and honest
Yes.
communication.
Yeah,
Like no matter how bad it is, the child has to know you're there for them. And it's tough. I mean,
right.
it's tough no matter what, that they can come to you, you know,
And
and, and
I'm sorry.
no,
Yeah,
no, go ahead. I
that
still
is the
don't
bottom
understand.
line. That
No, I'm
is the
like,
bottom line.
I know. And
Um,
it's like, it sounds very like simple, but I don't understand. I do a lot of speaking. And first of all, so I'm in the middle of New York City. And people are shocked, Dr. Carol, when I reveal to them just some simple facts, like about what kids are thinking, which I
uh,
always think, wow, they seem so shocked. Now, the internet, I'm always like, look, we know there's a lot of bad stuff, but we live in a digital world. It's not going away. So we're leveraging it for good. Because you and me, we're not giving it up. Look at us. We're 3,000 miles apart talking. This is terrific. This is great, right? We're talking, right? We're educating people. We're helping people. So we need to like teach leveraging for good, internet for good, and be that one that watches, kids, what they're doing and all that stuff. But I never understand, and I've said this to you like 4 times already, the resistance on the adult part when it should be protect that child no matter what. Like, work, that's it with all this going on. I mean, for
Well,
me, I'm shocked even like what's going on. How could the kids not be affected?
Well, first of all, some parents um, experienced that when they were children. The further back you go, like our grandparents or great grandparents, that was the philosophy back then. Protect the children away from all the bad stuff in the world. So some parents are just repeating that. But, some parents, I mean, I've asked parents about this, and some of them will say, well, I don't want to make my child anxious or
Oh,
depressed,
that's it.
or
Yes.
worried, or I mean that's the answer. But and then I explain, well, they're going to be, first of all, they know these things already. It's not like you can ever shield
Yes.
them from, and even before the internet, there were friends, people would talk in school, and that's the thing. The kids don't really understand things, and so they talk to each other about it, and they heighten, whatever it is that's going on, or they're just confused, and they pass on misinformation. So it's more important that you tell them the correct information than they're thinking, all these crazy things that are probably more frightening than what the truth is, and the truth is pretty frightening.
I mean, I think you and me are scaring everybody even more today, Dr. Carol, but whatever.
Well, no, I don't really.
I'm saying, no, I'm joking. I'm joking when I say
I mean,
that.
I don't mean to scare them, because I don't think. See, okay,
No, but I was
what I
joking
what
when I
I
said that
it's
because
okay,
I'm
it's
like
okay.
very real. I'm like always trying to be transparent and teach people and get to the core of stuff so the
Yes.
adult can understand so
Well,
they
what?
can teach the child then, you know?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, what I say to parents is that, really, there's a positive to this. You always have to look for the positive, and there's a positive to this, and that is that if parents realize that now it's more important than ever
Yes.
to be talking to your kids and to be sharing these things and to be asking them how they feel and getting them to express how they feel in different ways, that can build stronger nests at home than ever before. So that's the positive. Yes, there are some scary things to talk about and all that are happening in the world, but if you're there for them, if you pay more attention to them and you do things with them to build their resilience, that is going to be better than they were before.
Well, listen, so May is National Mental Health Awareness Month. Can you just give us a couple of what would be some of the disorders parents should look for or guardians should look for in kids? And then do you ever actually recommend, like I always, for me, like NAMI, because it's in all over the country, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, so people can read on their own or seek
Well,
out to see like so give us like what parents should look for just a little bit and
okay,
what do
sure.
you recommend? What if they say, geez, I don't know, is it just a typical 14-year-old or maybe they have depression? I don't know. Like what do you say to them?
Well, parents, first of all, should err on the side of caution. If they're not sure whether something means anything, means that it's a mental health problem or psychological problem, they should take the child to a therapist, to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a social worker. NAMI is primarily for people with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, for psychoses like those. It's good, but I don't know if a parent would be able to recognize a psychosis. But if you're seeing things like the child locks themselves up in their room or spends more time alone in their room than they were spending, or they don't seem to have as many friends as they used to have, or they're totally glued to their phones and take their phones you should never let them take their phones in with them at bedtime.
Never, never, never.
Never, ever. I mean, really, you should be making even stronger rules, like not at dinner, not at lunch. Dinner, by the way, what happened to the family dinners? They should be brought back. Those were so important. A time when you ask your child, how was your day? What happened today? Those, and the family is together. Those were and can still be really important times to notice if there's anything wrong, to figure out how to help your child if there's something wrong. Um, if if your child seems to be having, if you have any inkling that they might be drinking or using drugs, or you smell pot, for example, of course, those are warning signs that necessitate their being brought to a mental health professional. Now, let me dispel something. Psychiatrists, I'm a psychiatrist, and psychiatrists, when I was being trained, and for a little while after, but nowadays, a lot of psychiatrists are just pill pushers. You take your child to a psychiatrist, or an adult goes to a psychiatrist,
Yes.
and the psychiatrist asks about symptoms and then comes up with one or more medications that are aimed at these symptoms. And they give you a prescription after 20 minutes, a half an hour if you're lucky, and you walk away. And then they give you an appointment in a month. That is bad. No medication can cure whatever the symptoms are, whatever the problems are. You need therapy. Sometimes you may also need a medication, but you need therapy. And so, you need to find a psychiatrist. Ideally, in an ideal world, you would be able to find a psychiatrist who does therapy as well as medication, if medication is necessary. I won't see people unless they come to me for therapy at least once a week. I don't do med visits. That's ridiculous. That's harming the mental health of this country. That's a
So
big
I'm
part
so
of it.
happy you brought this up, because I just remember when my kids were in high school, they would say, like, all their friends were like on medications, like in middle and high school, and my kids weren't like, gossipy or anything. Oh, because they weren't. So they'd be like, this one's on, because I'd say, oh, so and so looks a little weird today, or like zombie, or
Yes,
he's
yes,
taken. And I do remember doctors sometimes saying, with the boys, like, when I would bring with my daughter, like, because I'd bring them all around, like, to the eye doctor once. My one son was running around the, like, examining table, because I had to bring him in with me. But he's like 4 years old. And the doctor's like, gee, I got a little something I can prescribe for you to keep
oh
him
my
real.
God.
And that was like another wake up call. I'm like, no, I think 4-year-old boys are supposed to act like that.
Yes,
Perhaps. He's like, well,
yes.
if you ever want something that, like, to and you don't think when you're busy like that, but like years later, you go back and you think about
Right.
stuff like that. So I'm so
Yes,
glad you brought that up, because
yes.
um
It's
everybody seems to be on these medications. And then on top of it, again, digressing a little bit, Dr. Carole, but we do a lot of work with all this poisonous fentanyl is being cut into, I'm not saying from doctors, but the kids are buying drugs on Snapchat with 2 clicks, and they're buying aspirin, they're buying, pot, all of it. And at the tip of a pencil can kill. Fentanyl. They're cutting this cheap stuff, this
yes.
poison. I don't call it a drug. I call it a poison, into things. So we have a campaign, one pill kills. So people have to be very aware. There's so many issues going on right now that the adults need to know about before, like, they can help the children. Because I used to
Yes,
think we got to
yes.
help the children, and then I realized the adults don't know a lot of it.
Right,
We got to
right.
train them first to help the kids. What do you think? I'm very concerned. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among 10 to 14-year-olds. And we also know, I work with a lot of healthcare professionals. Kids are showing up, girls with strangulation marks, like, on their necks, because their first sexual experience with a boy. The boys are watching all this porn. And we're talking about girls, the age of 10 and up.
Yes, it is so sad.
Like, I guess we just have to go back to be there, talk to your kids, ask questions.
Well, also, I mean, that was actually my first book back in the days when we didn't know terrorism was going to be so bad, or that it existed. Well, I know some people knew it existed. I guess I
Yeah,
didn't,
but
but
then you always think, Dr. Carole, I think the most of the public, I'll use myself, terrorism, it's over there somewhere. You know what I
right.
mean? Like, we didn't
Yes,
focus on it.
and people today still think that. That's the thing with these, going back to these protests for a minute. These college kids with their signs, I mean, they have no clue that the terrorist goal is not just to destroy Israel and kill Jews. Yes, that's their number one goal, but their long-term goal is to kill anyone and everyone who doesn't believe in radical Islam. And so if they came to the school and they came to one of these protests, they would kill most of these kids. and especially the ones who have LGBTQ plus, because they throw those people off the roof. They don't, in Sharia law and in their religion. Also, they don't believe in LGBTQ plus, so they punish these people. I mean, to today,
But look what they do to women too. Like,
and yes,
and where are the feminists, Dr. Carol, stepping up? I work on a
that's
lot of
right.
like bipartisan coalitions, and I'm like, where are the women stepping up for women and girls? Like, I'm not seeing it.
Yes, like after October 7th, when they were raped and all of that, when Hamas perpetrated these horrendous crimes, more brutal than ever before, except maybe back in the day in the Crusades. But these were horrendous crimes, and yes, where was Me Too then, saying, "Oh, this is terrible. All these women are being raped and their body parts are being burnt and taken off, and all of that." Yes, it's horrible. But to get back to the women, the kids getting strangled, that was my first book, Bad Boys: Why We Love Them, How to Live with Them, and When to Leave Them. And there are still bad boys around, and the way that what gets girls, whatever age, the way that attracts them to bad boys, the key thing that attracts them is their relationship, a dysfunctional relationship with their father.
Always. Yeah.
And that is what I talk about, 12 different types of bad boys. And that's what sends them in the direction of these different types, whatever kind of dysfunctional relationship they had with their father. So, there's that. There are so many divorces there in the last, 20, 40, 30 years.
Yeah, probably since the 80s, it started getting very prevalent, divorce, right?
Uh-huh.
I'd say.
And,
Yeah.
and so that is, that leaves scars. And unless your husband is really abusive, or something that can't be fixed. I mean, I think everybody should try to fix everything, but if after an attempt at therapy, a reasonably long attempt at therapy, they're not getting fixed, that might be a reason for divorce. Nobody should get divorced without having gone through a year of therapy, is my rule of thumb. So there are situations where a divorce is warranted, but unless it's like major like that, you need to think of the children and stay together and figure out a way to deal with that.
And we also, a lot of the work we do at the Warriors, girls that fall into exploitation and trafficking, there's never been a man in the house. So the first boy or man or guy that looks at them and tells them they're pretty, that's like one of the biggest ways these girls are getting sucked into that, thinking this is love, and then thinking, oh, I get beat up and I get sex trafficked, but he loves me. Like, we do a lot of work, and I don't even mean to smile about it, but it's like, no, no, no. So let's finish up with, leave us with
that's one thing, to go back to the 10-year-olds who let them boys strangle them.
Yes.
Just one thing.
I'm horrified about that.
It's
getting worse. It's getting worse, not better.
Yes, because at younger and younger ages, girls are doing sexual things with boys. Excuse me, boys are convincing them to do sexual things because of this need for a father figure and so on. And the thing also is that the girls think that this boy they're gonna go off into the sunset, and this boy is gonna marry them. This boy who they're having sex with in junior high school, middle school, they have these fantasies. And, oh, if I don't really want to do this, but if I let him do this, then we'll be together forever, and we'll, that's what their fantasies are. And of course it destroys them.
But also we have to always point out the pornography, and we really have a lot of studies on this. We work a lot on this. This is what the boys, they have such easy access to. I mean, all the kids. So a lot of these young boys are seeing this, like on their phones and things like that. So they think that's like love, because they're seeing this pornography is not just, two people having sex, because there's such violent categories of today, the pornography, that these boys actually think, because we do focus groups with kids and things, so they reveal to us eventually when we gain their trust, they think that's normal. These 12, 13-year-old boys, like, you strangle a girl, she wants that, she likes it. They don't even know they're seeing this. So how bad is that? They think that's what you're supposed to do to a girl.
And it started back in I guess the 80s, with MTV, with all those rap videos with the violence, that the men did
Well,
to
no,
the.
MTV, I started in the music business. So I used to do jingles for TV
Uh-huh,
commercials and
uh-huh,
things like that straight out of college. So I worked on MTV. I got the account. And when it first started, when they would do, I want my MTV, the little tags between the videos. But
uh-huh.
interestingly enough, so MTV started, it was just very sexual and it was all white. Go back in your brain. There was a big fight to put Michael
I
Jackson
was
video.
not a big MTV watcher, except that I know about the videos, the rap
Very
videos.
sexy, and then it gradually, they fought to get Michael Jackson on MTV. He was a big artist then, Thriller and all that. Then the black audience, started coming that way. And then now it's rap,
Right,
which is complete violence
right,
and violence
right,
against women. And it's like, oh, but
right.
nobody was stopping that train either. So, right,
Yes.
whatever makes money, they don't stop. How can the public help you? Is there a way they can help you? Well, they can buy your books. We're gonna have everything in the body of the video. But what would you like from the public?
I would like people to demand, if they have a child in college, they need to demand from the colleges, they need to, or even actually, it starts before. If they have a child in school and things are happening in school that you don't like, that you don't think are good, whether it's bullying of your child or some other child that you just know of, or drugs or anything that shouldn't be happening in school, you need to keep
Yeah.
fighting. You need to keep, calling, writing, the principal, the teachers, everybody. And certainly, of course, in the colleges, you need to get your voice known, not only to the colleges, but to call your congressman and everything else. And, the schools are not very receptive. I mean, I'm talking about not college. I mean, they're not receptive either. These colleges who don't even want to call in the police. Only some of them have finally, but you have to keep at it. Like they figure if they tell you yes, they'll look into it, you'll go away. But the things continue. And then you can also contact your newspaper, your local radio station, tell them what's going on at your school. Because yes, as you were mentioning earlier, there is an increase in kids fighting each other in middle school, in high school. I'm sure it's going to go down to elementary school. These brutal fights, and they leave children in very, this one girl, for example, she her head was knocked against the ground a gazillion times, and she's in very bad shape. She was put into a coma to try to heal, but she's gradually making some progress, but she's never going to be the same. And that kind of stuff has to stop.
Yeah, our kids are very, very angry. But I will say there is hope because some younger kids, like 8 and 10, we have some new studies, like they're happier when they're not using their phones, they're not gaming, they're not doing any of that stuff. We have tremendous success. We do district by district because you can't do it state or federally or anything, getting phones out of the classrooms.
Yes.
So kids can check them in
Yes.
the morning and then
That's a
pick them up.
That's
But
a no-brainer.
yeah, but they fight.
I was
Well,
so shocked to hear that they were actually allowed in the classrooms to begin with. How are you supposed to study or learn when
that's just it.
you have the
That's but
temptation of your
because
phone?
the parents need to support the movement or start the movement, and they say, "Well, we have school shootings. I have to get a hold of my child. Well, I have to be in touch at all times." No, you don't. You check them in the morning. You pick them up in the afternoon. That gives a nice solid 5, 6, whatever that amount of time is. We have the studies. Like everything I tell you, I can back up by different studies and stats where they don't isolate. Their lunchtime is spent talking and looking at other kids. They do better academically because they're listening to the teacher. I'm glad you pointed out, get the phones out of the bedrooms. That's one thing we preach all the time because the kids are coming to school. Lots of things happen at night. Kids are swiping, forget all the crazy stuff that goes online. They fall asleep on top of their desks. I have more teachers because they stay up all night. They're addicted. It's true
Right.
addiction, all this.
Yes. Yes, it
So
is.
I'm glad you pointed that. We need parents to be on top of it, like on a daily basis. We know everybody's overwhelmed, but like this, what is more important than our precious children, our future adults, our future leaders of the United States? Like we have to take control. So, parents have to be there. They have to join the board of ed, or just, you have every right. What are the books? What's the curriculum? You have to ask and you have to follow up. I'm glad you pointed that out. Leave us with some final words, as May is
Well,
Mental Health Awareness Month, and you are the expert. So you tell us what you want everybody to know.
Well, first of all, parents need to be parents, not friends. That's this trend. Oh, I want to keep my child liking me, so we're going to do this or that, or I'll let them have their
Well,
phone.
it
Or
hasn't worked. That hasn't
yes,
worked.
yes. So be parents, not friends. If you're not sure that there might be that they might be having some kind of psychological problem, take them to a therapist, of one kind or another, and a therapist who will do therapy, not throw medication at them. And what else? Be involved, be aware of what's going on. Talk to them about terrorism. Get my book; it'll make it easier.
We got to get all your books. Wait.
And what else? I think those are the main things. Just to well, no, one last thing: the dinners, the family dinners.
And also, if you don't mind, I'm going to throw in, I've discovered driving in the car, like if you're dropping your child at school or just driving to the market or something, and not like attacking them, but and hopefully they're not going to try to jump out the door while you're moving, but like you can just open up like, what games are you playing today? If it's like something like they're playing games online, or oh, so like you pointed out at the dinner table, how was lunch at school today? The car seems to work. Those little short rides around the, like kind of
Yes,
neighborhood. So to
that's a
get
time when you have their attention. Yes.
Yes. And so there's just so much, but again, our precious children are suffering. Things are not getting any better, but we have great hope because now at least there's a lot of talk about this. We got to just get people to listen.
Yes,
And
yes.
Dr. Carole Lieberman, I'm so happy you joined me today and happy to connect with you. And I want everybody, again, we'll have the information in the body of the video. We need everybody to buy your books and learn from them. Follow you also on Twitter at Dr. Carole MD, and also your website, terroristtherapist.com. Let me ask you something. I want to make this book my Warriors Book of the Month. Do I have your approval?
That would be very cool.
Because that's what I'm doing, because it's May 1 and I have to put up my book today. So I'm like, this is my book. This is perfect for me. That we promote, and we'll put in the newsletters and we promote. And also I've taken to the last couple of years for gifts for all my friends for holidays, and I buy books to help them. So I'm going to be adding this book to my list to get out to their kids because it's so needed. But I want to thank you. Thank you so much for sharing again your voice and your time, and for being that warrior. And we have a lot more to still talk about. So I hope you come back to the Warriors soon, Dr. Carole.
Sure. Yes. It's a lot to talk about. Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining me. We definitely are going to talk again soon.
All right.
Take good care.
Bye-bye.